Jake Martinez pressed his face against the cold window of the transport ship. Outside, stars moved past like tiny diamonds on black cloth. He had never seen so many stars before. Even from Earth's moon colonies, space never looked this clear. First, time in deep space? Asked the pilot, a blue-skinned woman with 4 arms. Her name was Captain Eula, and she came from a world where gravity was much lighter than Earth. Yes, Jake said. I still can't believe I'm going to the Galactic Academy. Captain Eula smiled, but Jake noticed she kept her distance. Everyone did, that around humans. They had heard stories about Earth, about how dangerous it was. They called it a death world. You should be proud, she said. Only 3 humans have ever been accepted to the Academy. You're making history. Jake nodded, but inside he felt nervous. He had studied hard for years to get this chance. His scores, in science and math, were perfect. But he knew that wasn't why everyone stared at him. They stared because he came from Earth, and Earth scared them. The transport ship began to slow down. Through the window, Jake saw Harmony 7's station growing. Larger. It was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Lights twinkled across its surface like a metal planet. Ships moved in and out of docking bays like busy insects. There she is, Captain Eula said. Home to students from 200 different worlds. You'll find species there you've never heard of. Jake felt his heart beat faster. He was excited and scared at the same time. What if the other students didn't like him? What if they were afraid of him like everyone else seemed to be? The ship docked with a soft bump. Jake grabbed his single bag and followed Captain Eula through the airlock. The station's air smelled different than Earth air. It was cleaner and had a slight metallic taste. The docking bay was full of aliens. Jake had seen pictures before, but seeing them in person was different. There were tall, thin beings with gray skin and large black eyes. Short, furry creatures that looked like walking teddy bears. Things that looked like walking trees and others that seemed to be made of living crystal. Jake Martinez? A voice called his name. Jake turned to see a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis walking toward him. It stood on 2 legs and had 4 arms. Its head was triangular, with large compound eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. I am Professor Zenth, the creature said. Its voice was high and musical. I will be your dorm supervisor. Welcome to Harmony 7. Jake tried to smile. Thank you, Professor. I'm happy to be here. Professor Zenth's head tilted to one side. You are smaller than I expected for a human. Our file said your species was quite large and dangerous. I'm still growing, Jake said. And I'm not dangerous. I'm just a student. Professor Zenth made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Of course, come, let me show you your room. Your roommate is waiting to meet you. They walked through wide corridors filled with students. Jake noticed how they all moved out of his way, even though he was trying to walk carefully. Conversations stopped when he passed. Some students pointed at him and whispered to their friends. Don't mind them, Professor Zenth said. Most have never seen a human before. Your reputation comes before you. What kind of reputation? Jake asked. Stories about your world mostly. They say humans can survive in places that would kill other species in seconds. They say you can go without food and water for days. They say you heal from wounds that would be fatal to others. Jake frowned. Those things aren't really special. Everyone on Earth can do that. Professor Zenth stopped walking and stared at him. Everyone? Your entire species? Well, yes, you have to be tough to live on Earth. But we're not monsters or anything. They continued walking in silence. Jake could feel Professor Zenth watching him with those strange compound eyes. Finally, they reached a door marked with symbols Jake couldn't read. Professor Zenth touched a pad next to the door and it slid open. Your room, Professor Zenth said. You will share it with Vexthali of Aquanis. The room was bigger than Jake had expected. There were 2 beds, 2 desks, and a large window that looked out at the stars. Sitting on one of the beds was his roommate. Vexthali looked like he was made of living water and crystal. His body was clear blue and light seemed to move through him like waves. When he moved, Jake could hear a soft musical sound, like wind chimes. Hello, Vexthali said. His voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. I am honored to meet the human student. Jake walked over and held out his hand. I'm Jake, nice to meet you. Vexathali looked at Jake's hand with confusion. On his world, they probably didn't shake hands. Jake dropped his hand and felt embarrassed. On my world, Jake said, we shake hands when we meet someone new. But we don't have to do that here. I would like to try, Vexathali said. He reached out with something that looked like an arm made of water. When their hands touched, Jake felt a cool, pleasant sensation. Interesting, Vexathali said. Your skin is much warmer than I expected, and your grip is very strong. Jake quickly let go. Sorry, I didn't mean to squeeze too hard. It's fine, Vexathali said. I was just surprised. Your species is fascinating. Professor. Zenth cleared his throat. Jake, you should know that there are special rules for you here. For the safety of other students. Jake's heart sank. What kind of rules? Nothing too strict, Professor Zenth said quickly. You must be careful during physical activities. Your strength could accidentally hurt other students. You must eat in a special section of the dining hall because your food might be toxic to other species. And you must report to medical every week for health checks. Health checks? To make sure you're not carrying any diseases from your Deathworld. Many species here have no resistance to Earth bacteria. Jake nodded, but he felt sad. He had hoped things would be different here. He had hoped people would see him as just another student, not as something dangerous. Don't worry, Vexathali said as if reading his thoughts. I requested you as my roommate specifically. I have studied your species, and I believe the fears about humans are mostly exaggerated. Jake looked at his new roommate with surprise and gratitude. Really? Really, Vexathali said. His crystal body seemed to glow a little brighter. I think we're going to be great friends. For the first time since leaving Earth, Jake smiled a real smile. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Jake woke up to the sound of soft music. Vexathali was sitting by the window and his crystal body was making gentle sounds like a quiet song. The light from the stars made him glow softly in the dark room. Good morning, Jake said, stretching. He felt good after his first night of sleep on the station. Good morning, Jake, Vexathali replied. Did you sleep well? I was worried the temperature might be too cold for you. Jake smiled. It was perfect. Thank you for asking. They got ready for their first day of classes. Jake put on his new student uniform, which was light blue with silver trim. All students wore the same colors, no matter what planet they came from. The dining hall was huge, with hundreds of tables. Jake saw his special section right away. It was smaller than the others, with only 5 tables. A sign above it read, Restricted Diet Zone, in multiple languages. I'm sorry you have to eat alone, Vexathali said. It's okay, Jake said, but he didn't really mean it. He wanted to eat with his new friend. Jake got his breakfast from a machine that scanned his student card. The food looked strange, but it tasted like scrambled eggs and toast. He sat at his table and watched other students eating together, laughing and talking. A small, furry creature with big eyes walked over to his table. It looked nervous. Excuse me, it said in a squeaky voice. Are you the human? Yes, I'm Jake. What's your name? I'm Pip, the creature said. I'm from Zentoria. I've never seen a human before. Is it true that you can eat poison? Jake almost choked on his food. What? No, I can't eat poison. Why would you think that? Someone said humans can eat things that would kill other species. Jake thought about this. Well, I guess some foods from Earth might be dangerous for others. Like chocolate is poisonous to some Earth animals, but I can't eat actual poison. Pip looked disappointed. Oh. What about the stories that say humans can go without water for weeks? Maybe a week if we really had to, Jake said. But it would be very uncomfortable. We need water just like everyone else. Can you really see in complete darkness? Jake shook his head. No, but we can see better in dim light than some species. Pip's ears drooped. The stories made humans sound much more exciting. Jake laughed. Sorry to disappoint you, I'm pretty normal. After breakfast, Jake went to his first class, Survival Studies with Professor Morvac. The classroom was large, with seats designed for many different body types. Jake sat in the back trying not to draw attention. Professor Morvac was a large, bear-like creature with thick gray fur and small black eyes. He spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. Today we will discuss planetary habitat design, Professor Morvac said. You will work in teams to create living spaces for different world types. He divided the class into groups of 4. Jake was put with Pip, a tall, blue-skinned student named Kexmore, and a floating jellyfish-like being called Zara. Your assignment, Professor Morvac continued, is to design a habitat that could support life on a Class 7 hostile world. The planet has surface temperatures ranging from -30 to +40 degrees. Atmospheric pressure is 1.2 standard. Radiation levels are moderate. The other students in Jake's group looked worried. That's impossible, Kexmore said. No civilized species could survive those conditions. The temperature swings alone would kill most of us. Zara agreed, her translucent body flickering with nervous colors. Pip was trembling. -30 degrees? That's colder than space. Jake looked at their assignment sheet. Actually, this doesn't seem too bad. On Earth, we have places that get much colder and much hotter than this. His teammates stared at him. You're joking, Kexmore said. No, really. Where I come from in North America, winter temperatures can hit -40, and deserts can reach 50 degrees or more. But the radiation, Zara said. The radiation level listed here is less than what we get naturally on Earth from our sun. The classroom had gone quiet. Jake realized everyone was listening to him. Professor Morvac walked over to their table. Mr. Martinez, perhaps you could share your habitat design with the class. Jake felt his face turn red. I don't want to offer anything. Please, Professor Morvac said. I'm curious about the human perspective. Jake stood up slowly. Well, for the temperature problem, we could build underground during the day and use the stored ground heat at night. We could collect water from condensation when the temperature changes. For radiation protection, we could use the planet's natural materials to make thick walls. He drew a simple diagram on the classroom's display screen. We could also use mirrors to reflect heat away during hot periods and focus it for warmth during cold periods. The class was completely silent. And for food, Professor Morvac asked, we could try growing underground plants using artificial lights. Or maybe find local plants that can handle the temperature changes. A student near the front raised her hand. But what if there's a solar storm? The radiation would increase 100 times. Jake shrugged. We'd have to go deeper underground until it passed. Maybe build emergency shelters. For how long? Another student asked. However long it takes. Days, weeks, maybe months. The classroom erupted in whispers. Jake heard words like impossible and insane and typical Deathworlder. Professor Morvac held up a hand for quiet. Mr. Martinez, what you've described is a survival scenario that would challenge even our most advanced species. Yet you speak of it as if it were a simple camping trip. Jake sat back down, feeling embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make it sound easy. It's just that on Earth we deal with these kinds of problems all the time. All the time? Kexmore asked. Well, Earth has lots of different environments. Some are hot, some are cold, some are dry, some are wet. Humans have learned to live in all of them. Bexathali, who was sitting across the room, made his musical sound that meant he was thinking hard. After class, Jake walked slowly back to his room. He felt like he had made a mistake. Everyone was looking at him strangely now, and not just with curiosity. Some looked scared. Bexathali caught up with him in the hallway. Jake, he said, I need to ask you something. What? Is your planet really as dangerous as you made it sound in class? Jake stopped walking. I wasn't trying to make it sound dangerous. I was just answering the questions. But -40 degrees, radiation from your sun, solar storms, Jake realized. What was happening? Bexathali, those things are normal on Earth. We don't think of them as dangerous because we've always lived with them. Vexitali's crystal body flickered with different colors. Jake, my friend, I think you don't understand something important. What? Most worlds in the galaxy are very gentle places. My home world of Aquanus never gets colder than 15 degrees or hotter than 25. We have no dangerous weather. No radiation, no violent storms. Jake stared at him. Never? Never. That's why they call Earth a death world, Jake. It's not because humans are violent or mean, it's because your planet would kill most of us in minutes. For the first time since leaving Earth, Jake began to understand why everyone looked at him the way they did. He wasn't just a student from another planet. He was a survivor from a world that most species couldn't even imagine living on, and that scared them more than he had ever realized. Jake had been at the academy for 2 weeks when the emergency happened. He was in the library studying for his next exam, when the lights suddenly turned red and alarms started ringing. All students report to emergency stations immediately, a voice said over the speakers. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jake looked around. Other students were moving quickly but calmly toward the exits. He followed them, not sure what was happening. In the main corridor, Professor Zenth was directing students to different areas. When he saw Jake, he waved him over. Jake, you need to go to Safe Zone Alpha, Professor Zenth said. His compound eyes were moving rapidly, a sign he was very worried. What's happening? Jake asked. Environmental system failure in Section C. Toxic gas leak. Very dangerous. Jake nodded and started to walk toward Safe Zone Alpha, but he stopped when he heard crying. Near the entrance to Section C, 3 small Zentorian students were huddled together. They looked terrified. Why aren't they evacuating? Jake asked Professor Zenth. Professor Zenth's head turned toward the Zentorians. Oh no, Pip and his study group. They must have been in study room C7 when the lockdown happened. Lockdown? The emergency blast doors sealed automatically when the gas leak was detected. They're trapped inside Section C. Jake felt his heart start beating faster. Can't we get them out? The rescue team is preparing, but it will take at least an hour to get the proper equipment. The gas in there would kill most species in minutes. Jake looked at the blast door leading to Section C. A red warning light was flashing above it, and symbols he couldn't read were probably saying something about danger. What kind of gas is it? Jake asked. Professor Zenth checked his tablet. Chlorine mixed with sulfur compounds, highly toxic to most oxygen-breathing species. Jake thought about this. He remembered from his Earth history classes that humans had survived poison gas attacks during old wars. Not easily, but they had survived. Professor, Jake said slowly, what would happen if a human breathed that gas? A human? Professor Zenth's eyes focused on Jake. It would be very unpleasant, but probably not fatal in small amounts. Why do you ask? Jake was already walking toward the blast door. Because those kids are going to die if someone doesn't help them. Jake, wait. Professor Zenth called after him. You can't go in there. But Jake was already at the emergency controls. He had watched Professor Zenth use similar panels before. He pressed the emergency override button. I need a breathing mask, Jake said. Jake, this is too dangerous, even for a human. Professor, those are my friends in there. Pip was the first student who talked to me. I can't just let him die. Professor Zenth stared at Jake for a long moment. Then he went to an emergency cabinet and pulled out a basic breathing mask. This will help a little, he said, handing it to Jake. But the gas will still affect you. Jake put on the mask and approached the blast door. Professor Zenth entered a code and the door slowly opened. The smell hit Jake immediately, even through the mask. It was like bleach mixed with rotten eggs. His eyes started watering right away and his throat felt scratchy. Jake stepped into Section C. The corridor was filled with yellowish fog that made it hard to see. Emergency lights cast strange shadows through the toxic cloud. He found study, room C7 at the end of the corridor. Through the window he could see 3 small shapes huddled on the floor. They weren't moving. The door to the study room was locked. Jake tried the manual override, but it didn't work. The gas had probably damaged the electronics. Jake looked at the door. It was made of metal, but not very thick. On Earth, doors like this were meant to keep people separated, not to stop someone who really needed to get through. He took a deep breath through his mask and slammed his shoulder against the door. Pain shot through his arm, but the door didn't move. Jake stepped back and kicked the door as hard as he could. The metal bent slightly. His lungs were starting to burn from the gas and his eyes were streaming with tears. But he could hear weak crying from inside the room. Jake kicked the door again, and again. On the fourth kick, the lock broke, and the door swung open. Inside, Pip and two other Zentaurian students were unconscious on the floor. Jake could barely see them through his tears, but they were still breathing. Jake picked up the first student. She was light, maybe 30 pounds. He carried her to the corridor, and then came back for the second one. Pip was the last. Jake lifted his small friend carefully. Pip's big eyes opened slightly. "Jake," Pip whispered. "You came for us." "Of course I did," Jake said. His voice was rough from the gas. "We're friends, aren't we?" Jake carried Pip toward the exit, but his vision was getting blurry. The gas was affecting him more than he had expected. He stumbled and almost fell. Through the fog, he saw lights approaching. The rescue team had arrived with full protective suits and breathing equipment. "Human student," one of them called. "What are you doing in here?" "Saving my friends," Jake said. Two rescue workers in full suits took the Zentaurian students from Jake and carried them toward the exit. Another worker supported Jake as they walked out of Section C. As soon as they were through the blast door, medical teams were waiting. Jake pulled off his mask and immediately started coughing. His throat felt like fire and his lungs ached with each breath. "Get him to the medical bay immediately," someone said. But Jake was looking at the three Zentaurian students. They were on stretchers with oxygen masks over their faces. Their eyes were open and they were moving. "Are they okay?" Jake asked between coughs. A doctor, who looked like a tall blue crane, nodded. "They'll be fine. A few more minutes in that gas and they would have died. You saved their lives." Jake felt relief wash over him. Then everything went black. He woke up in the medical bay several hours later. His throat still hurt and his eyes felt raw, but he was alive. Vexthali was sitting next to his bed along with Professor Zenth. "How do you feel?" Vexthali asked. "Like I swallowed sandpaper," Jake said. "But okay." "Jake," Professor Zenth said, "what you did was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish. I couldn't just let them die. Most students would have waited for the rescue team." Jake tried to sit up. "Most students aren't from Earth." Professor Zenth made his clicking sound. "No, they are not." The door to the medical bay opened, and Captain Roy Henderson walked in. Jake had never seen him before, but the man was clearly human. He was tall and muscular with short gray hair and kind eyes. "Mr. Martinez," Captain Henderson said, "I'm the human liaison officer for this sector. I came as soon as I heard what happened." "Am I in trouble?" Jake asked. Captain Henderson smiled. "Quite the opposite. The Academy Board wants to give you a medal for heroism." "I don't need a medal." "Maybe not, but you're getting one anyway." Captain Henderson sat down next to the bed. "Jake, do you understand what you did today?" "I helped some friends." "You walked into an environment that would have killed most species. In minutes broke down a locked door with your bare hands and carried 3 students to safety, all while breathing poison gas." Jake looked confused. "Anyone would have done the same thing." Captain Henderson and Professor Zenth exchanged looks. "No, son," Captain Henderson said gently. "Anyone from Earth might have done the same thing. But, Jake, there are 200 species represented at this academy. You're the only one who could have survived that rescue." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Is that why everyone looks at me differently now?" "What do you mean?" "Since I got back from the medical bay, students have been staring at me more than before. Some look scared, but others look, I don't know, different." Vexthali's crystal body chimed softly. "Jake, they're not scared anymore. They're amazed." "Amazed? You risked your life to save students from another species, students you barely knew. That's not something most people would do." Professor Zenth nodded. "On most worlds, different species compete with each other. But you protected others without thinking about yourself." Jake still looked confused. That's just what you do when someone needs help. Captain Henderson smiled. And that, son, is exactly why humanity belongs in the galactic community. After the rescue, everything changed for Jake. Students who had once avoided him now wanted to sit near him in classes. Some asked for his autograph. Others just stared at him with wonder in their eyes. But not everyone was happy about Jake's new fame. 3 days after the incident, Jake was eating lunch in his special section when Kexmore approached his table. The tall blue student from his survival class looked angry. "So you're the hero now," Kexmore said, his voice cold. Jake looked up from his food. "I'm not a hero, I just helped some friends." "Friends?" Kexmore laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. "You barely knew those Centaurians. You did it to show off." "That's not true, isn't it?" Kexmore leaned closer. "You wanted everyone to see how strong and brave the human is, how much better you are than the rest of us." Jake felt his face getting hot. "I never said I was better than anyone. You don't have to say it. Every day in class, you talk about your dangerous planet, like it's something to be proud of. You make the rest of us look weak." Other students had started watching their conversation. Jake noticed that some were nodding along with Kexmore's words. "I don't mean to make anyone feel bad," Jake said quietly. "But you do," said another voice. A red-skinned student with 4 eyes joined Kexmore. "I'm Nex from the Hegemony Worlds. My people have built great cities and traveled between stars for thousands of years. But you make us sound like children because we can't survive on your death planet." More students gathered around Jake's table. Some looked curious, others looked upset. "Maybe humans shouldn't be here," Kexmore said loudly. "This is a place for civilized species, not savage Deathworlders." Jake stood up quickly, and several students stepped back. He realized they were still afraid of him, even after he had saved their friends. "I'm not savage," Jake said. "I'm just trying to learn like everyone else." "Are you?" Kexmore asked. "Or are you here to prove that humans are superior to the rest of the galaxy?" Jake felt confused and hurt. He had thought things were getting better, but now it seemed like some students disliked him even more than before. "I think I should go," Jake said. He picked up his tray and started to leave. "That's right," Kexmore called after him. "Run away back to your safe little death world." Jake stopped walking. He turned around slowly. "You know what?" Jake said. "Maybe I should tell you more about Earth. You want to know what it's really like?" The dining hall had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now. "My planet has storms that can destroy entire cities. We have earthquakes that split the ground open. We have deserts where you die of thirst in hours, and frozen places where you die of cold in minutes." Jake's voice was getting stronger. "We have diseases that killed millions of people. We have wild animals that hunt us for food. We have poisonous plants and toxic air in some places." Some of the younger students looked scared now. "But you know what else we have?" Jake continued. "We have art. We write songs about love and loss and hope. We create beautiful paintings and tell stories that make people cry. We help strangers, and take care of the sick and protect children." Jake looked directly at Kexmore. "Yes, Earth is dangerous. Yes, it made us strong. But it also taught us to care for each other, because if we don't, we all die." The dining hall was completely silent. "Didn't come here to show off or prove I'm better than anyone," Jake said. "I came here to learn from all of you, to see how other species live and think and create, because even though Earth made us survivors, it couldn't teach us everything." Jake picked up his tray again. "If that makes me a savage Deathworlder, then I guess that's what I am." He walked out of the dining hall, leaving behind a room full of very quiet students. Back in his room, Jake sat on his bed and felt more homesick than he had since arriving at the academy. Maybe Kexmore was right. Maybe he didn't belong here. Vexthali came in a few minutes later. His crystal body was glowing with soft blue light, which Jake had learned meant he was thinking hard. "I heard what happened in the dining hall," Vexthali said. "I probably shouldn't have said all those things about Earth," Jake said. "I scared some of the younger students." "Maybe. But you also made them think." Jake looked at his roommate. "Think about what?" about what it means to be strong. Vexthali sat on his own bed. Jake, most species in the galaxy became civilized. By avoiding danger, not by facing it. We built safe worlds and safe lives. That sounds nice? It is nice. But it also makes us soft, maybe. We don't know how to handle real problems when they come. Jake was quiet for a moment. Is that bad? Not bad, just different. But Jake, what you said about humans helping each other because you have to, that's not savage. That's beautiful. There was a soft knock on their door. Vexthali opened it to find Pip standing in the hallway. The little Zentorian looked nervous. Jake, Pip said. Can I talk to you? Of course, Pip. Come in. Pip walked into the room and sat down on the floor. I wanted to thank you again for saving me and my friends. You don't need to keep thanking me. But I do. And I wanted to tell you something else. Pip looked up at Jake with his big eyes. I've been reading about Earth since the accident. Oh. I hope it wasn't too scary. It was terrifying, Pip said honestly, but also amazing. Did you know that humans have written over 1 million songs and painted millions of pictures and written so many books that no one could read them all in a lifetime? Jake smiled. We do like to create things. And you do all of this while living on a planet that's trying to kill you every day. Earth isn't trying to kill us, Jake said. It's just challenging. That's what I mean, Pip said excitedly. Most species would spend all their time just trying to survive on a world like that. But humans still find time to make beautiful things and help each other. Pip stood up. I don't think you're savage, Jake. I think you're the most civilized species I've ever met. After Pip left, Jake and Vexthali sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jake, Vexthali finally said, I have an idea. What kind of idea? What? If you showed the other students more about human culture? Not the dangerous parts of Earth, but the beautiful parts. Jake thought about this. Like what? Music, art, stories. Show them what humans create, not just what you survive. Jake felt a spark of excitement. You think that would help? I think it would help them understand that being from a death world doesn't make you a savage. It makes you someone who chooses to create beauty in a dangerous universe. Jake smiled for the first time since the argument in the dining hall. Vexthali, that's a great idea. So you'll do it? Yes, Jake said. But I'm going to need help. I can't organize something like that by myself. Vexthali's crystal body chimed, with musical laughter. Jake, after what you did to save Pip and his friends, I think you'll find that lots of students want to help you. Jake hoped his roommate was right. He wanted to show his fellow students that humans were more than just survivors from a dangerous world. He wanted to show them that Earth had taught humans not just how to endure, but how to hope. And maybe, if he was lucky, he could help bridge the gap between the humans and the rest of the galaxy. Not through strength or survival skills, but through the one thing that all intelligent species shared, the desire to create something beautiful in the darkness. The cultural event was scheduled for the following week. Jake spent every free moment preparing with help from Vexthali and a growing number of other students who were curious about human culture. Pip helped Jake set up displays showing human art and inventions. A quiet student named Ren, who looked like a walking tree, offered to help with music arrangements. Even some students who had been afraid of Jake before started asking questions about Earth. But Kexmore and his friends were not happy about the event. It's just another way for the human to show off, Kexmore told anyone who would listen. He wants us to think his savage species is cultured and civilized. Jake tried to ignore the negative comments and focus on his preparations. He had contacted Earth through the Academy's communication system and arranged for some special guests to join by video link. The night before the event, Jake couldn't sleep. He was nervous about speaking in front of so many students. What if they didn't understand what he was trying to show them? What if Kexmore was right, and this just made things worse? You're worried, Vexthali observed from his bed. His crystal body was dim, showing he was ready for sleep. What if this doesn't work? Jake asked. What if I just make everyone more afraid of humans? Jake, do you remember what you told me about Earth music? What about it? You said humans write songs about their feelings, even sad and scary feelings. You said it helps people understand that they're not alone. Jake nodded. That's what you're doing tomorrow. Bexithali said. You're helping all of us understand that we're not alone in the universe. That different doesn't mean dangerous. The next evening, the main auditorium was packed. Students from dozens of species filled the seats, talking quietly among themselves. Jake saw Professor Zenth and Captain Henderson in the front row, along with other faculty members. Jake walked onto the stage, feeling nervous but determined. The auditorium went quiet. Hello, everyone, Jake began. Thank you for coming tonight. I know some of you have questions about humans and about Earth. I hope tonight can answer some of those questions. He gestured to the displays around the stage. These show some of the things humans have created over thousands of years. Art, music, stories, inventions. But I think the best way to understand human culture is to experience it. Jake pressed a button, and music began to play through the auditorium's speakers. It was a gentle folk song performed by a human choir back on Earth. The melody was simple, but beautiful. It told the story of people traveling far from home, missing their families, but finding hope in friendship and new experiences. Jake watched the audience as the music played. Many students were completely still, listening with wonder. He saw some of the smaller students had tears in their eyes. When the song ended, the auditorium was silent for a long moment. That was beautiful, whispered a student in the front row. The emotions, said another. I could feel what they were feeling. Jake smiled. That song is about being homesick, but finding hope in new places. I think many of you can understand that feeling. Murmurs of agreement came from the audience. Now I'd like to introduce you to someone special, Jake said. He activated the communication screen and a woman's face appeared. This is Lisa Crawford, Jake said. She's a human teacher and artist from Earth. Lisa smiled and waved at the camera. Hello, students of Harmony 7. Jake has told me so much about all of you. Lisa is going to sing something for us, Jake explained. This song is very old on Earth. It's about how all living things are connected, no matter how different they seem. Lisa began to sing in a clear, strong voice. The song was about rivers and mountains, birds and trees, and how everything in nature depended on everything else. But it was also about people from different places learning to live together in peace. As Lisa sang, Jake watched the audience. Even Kexmore seemed to be listening, though he was trying to look uninterested. When the Edu song ended, many students were crying. The melody and words had touched something deep inside them. Questions? Jake asked. A small, fuzzy student raised her hand. Do all humans make music like this? Many do, Jake said. We have sad songs and happy songs, love songs and war songs. Music helps us share our feelings with each other. Even on your dangerous planet? Asked another student. Especially on our dangerous planet, Jake said. When life is hard, art becomes more important, not less important. It reminds us why we keep fighting to survive. More hands went up around the auditorium. Is it true that humans help strangers, even ones from different tribes? Asked a bird-like student. Yes, we have a saying. We're all in this together. Earth taught us that we need each other to survive. But you also fight wars, called out Kexmore from the back. Your species has a history of violence. Jake nodded sadly. Yes, we do fight sometimes. Earth taught us to be strong, but it didn't always teach us to be wise. We're still learning how to use our strength the right way. Like when you saved Pip and his friends? Asked a student near the middle. Exactly like that, Jake said. Earth made us strong so we could protect each other, not hurt each other. An elderly professor near the front stood up. Mr. Martinez, I've studied many species over my long life. I've always wondered how humans managed to develop such rich culture on such a hostile world. Jake thought for a moment. I think it's because we had to. When everything around you is dangerous, you need beauty to make life worth living. When you might die tomorrow, you want to leave something behind that shows you were here. The professor nodded thoughtfully and sat back down. I have one more thing to share, Jake said. He pressed another button, and images began appearing on screens around the auditorium. The images showed Earth in all its variety: snowy mountains and tropical beaches, great cities full of lights and quiet forests full of animals, humans of all colors and ages working together, playing together, creating together. "This is Earth," Jake said. "Yes, it's dangerous, but it's also beautiful. And it's home to 7 billion humans who write songs and paint pictures and tell stories and help each other survive." The last image showed Earth from space, a blue and white marble floating in the darkness. "We're not savage Deathworlders," Jake said quietly. "We're just people who happened to grow up on a challenging planet, and that challenge taught us something important. When you're surrounded by danger, the most important thing you can do is take care of each other." The auditorium was completely silent. Then, slowly, one student began to clap. Then, another. Within moments, the entire auditorium was applauding. Jake saw Kexmore in the back row. The tall blue student wasn't clapping, but he wasn't looking angry anymore either. He looked thoughtful. After the event, students crowded around Jake with more questions. They wanted to know about human holidays, human food, human families. They asked about Earth's animals and plants and weather. But most of all, they wanted to know more about human friendship. "Is it true that humans will risk their lives for friends?" and asked Pip. "Sometimes," Jake said, "when it's important." "Even friends from other species?" Jake smiled and looked around at all the alien faces surrounding him. "Especially friends from other species." Later that night, back in his room, Jake felt more at home than he had since arriving at the academy. He had shown his fellow students that humans were more than just survivors. They were creators, dreamers, and friends. "How do you feel?" Vex Thali asked. "Good," Jake said. "Really good. I think I finally understand why I'm here." "Why?" "To build bridges between humans and the rest of the galaxy. To show that being different doesn't mean being dangerous." Vexathali's crystal body chimed with gentle music. "I think you're succeeding, my friend." Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new friendships. But tonight, for the first time since leaving Earth, he felt like he truly belonged among the stars.